Hey, good evening. The Design Review Board number 1 public meeting of July the 22nd, 2010 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phone and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and to submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by calling our Design Review Board hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. Roll call, Board Member Aliano.
Here.
Board Member Palmer.
Here.
Board Member Yu.
Here.
Chairman Simonian, or Chairman Insua.
Here.
And Board Member Simonian is actually running just a little bit late. He will be joining us shortly. Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I do not have any oral communication cards.
I don't either.
Chairman Insua, none. That brings us to the review calendar. There are no staff announcements at this time. There are 3 cases on tonight's agenda. I would like to note a correction on the very first case. This would be for case number 1-PDR 2010-023A. The address should be 3725. Unfortunately, the numbers were juxtaposed and it came out to 3752 Fifth Avenue. So again, just for correction, the address is 3725 Fifth Avenue. At this point in time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Chairman Insua.
Oh, good. Good afternoon, everybody. Why don't we start with the first project, which is case number 1, PDR 2010-023-A. The address is 3725 Fifth Avenue. And why don't we have our staff presentation of the project?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, board members. As you mentioned, the case number for the first case is 1 PDR 2010-023A, located at 3725 Fifth Avenue. The proposal is to legalize a 186 square foot addition to an existing 835 square foot house. Of that 186 square foot addition, 171 is to the front, which is in enclosure of the front porch, and 14 square foot bathroom expansion at the rear. Currently there's a 835 square foot house on the side. The lot is 3,750 square feet, and the house was built in 1947 in the R12 zone. There is a setback and standards variance granted to this project in January of 2007, January 27 of 2010, I apologize, which allowed for the addition to take place in the front setback while maintaining the existing one-car garage and the existing substandard landscape area, which is less than 40%. There are no environmental constraints. The historic preservation planner has reviewed this project and has found that this is not a potential historic resource. There are actually a set of photographs posted behind you and another set, which there you have it. In those photos, these are the only evidence we have of the original house when it was built, what it used to look like, and then you can also see the house after it was added to. Obviously, you can see the addition is not finished, it's not completed. But staff can, if you look at the photos, you will see that the original house had an architectural element to it to the front, which was the main architectural element of this house, which is the covered porch with the railing, and that has been not removed but diminished in a way because it's been completely enclosed, and that is the reason why staff could not support this project and recommends a return for redesign with additional design elements added to this project, such as perhaps additional fenestrations in smaller forms and probably in numbers that would hopefully create the illusion of a third dimension or a depth to the front, which it used to have with the porch. So that is the staff's assessment of the project. I am here for questions. Applicant is also here in the audience if you have any questions. Yes.
I have one question. Where would we read? The northeast rear corner, the way this plan shows, there's a new addition right here. Is that proposed to be removed? If you look at the rear shot. It's right here.
I think that is the addition they're trying to legalize and then reduce the size, I would think.
But that's on the front. This is the rear. It's not.
There's also an addition in the back. This
Yeah,
one.
but I'm saying it starts right here. It goes clear across. You're talking about a little area here, when you're on the site.
That, I'll let the applicant get to that point, but that addition is going to be reduced in size to meet what's on the plan.
Got it. Okay. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, any more do we want to discuss with staff?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. I have two speaker cards. The first one is the designer, Mr. Garo Nazarian. Your name is.
Good evening. My name is Garo Nazarian, 109 East Harvard, Suite 306 in Glendale. The proposed project consists of the enclosure of an existing open gallery that provides access to the main residence. While the alteration of the building is already completed, it is hereby proposed to change the fenestration of the elevation by providing windows of the much larger size that will create a lighter facade image and the addition of an open access stairway that will repeat the thematic element of the previous open gallery. This will further provide a lighter architectural feature in the front, thus breaking up the visually visible surfaces. And for this design, actually, we did work with the staff, with the Stephanie and the Georg together to come to a point to more acceptable. And originally it was proposed a smaller window, but talking with the staff, it was their suggestion to give bigger windows to give more transparency to building. And this addition, it has been done within the existing building line. We didn't approach in the setback or whatever. There was already, the addition is within the building setback, and just in that addition portion in the one corner that it was not meeting the minimum setback requirement. We are notching back about 2 feet to give that minimum 5 feet setback required. And as Georg mentioned, this is a very small house, and checking even the floor plan, you will see that original house, it was a two-bedroom, one-bath house, and the family of 4 with the 2 kids that now they are more adult, grown up. They want 2 separate rooms. Even with this addition, just we are providing very small rooms for each kid of the family. The total square footage of the house after the addition, it will be 1,021 square feet, just to accommodate the needs of the owner of the house. And I did provide some photos of the surrounding. And I think that you had this original picture of the house, and the style of the house is not well defined, and there are no prominent architectural features or details to be considered. And even looking to the neighboring buildings, it's kind of building that it fits on the neighboring area, on the neighborhood. And if I have any other additional questions, I will be happy to answer it.
Thank you, sir.
We are looking for the approval of this project to finish it. It's a long time that they started with no permit this construction. Just we want to finish this project and to eliminate this eyesore from the neighbors.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions for the designer?
One, are you intending to extend the eave lines all the way around on the front and the back?
Actually, yeah, that is that was one point that having discussion with the staff, it was their recommendation at least to extend the eaves to give more look, or to go closer to the original look of the building.
Okay.
Yeah, we are extending the eaves.
What is the existing windows on the house?
The existing windows are vinyl.
They're all vinyl,
But
all the way
for
around.
the front one, it was a discussion with the staff for the front one at least to change it to the fiberglass windows.
Okay. Is there room in the front to add a porch?
Because the building, it has been built in 1940s with the 20-feet setback, and today the setback requirement is 25 feet for that zone. There is no room to add
So you can just have a
porch.
landing but not an overhang there?
Yes.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next speaker we have is a neighbor, Mr. Richard Less. Your name and address, please, for the record.
Richard Liss, Liss. I own the house next door at 3719 Fifth Avenue. And beg forgiveness here. This is the first time I've been here. I just seen that sign yesterday. Just have some questions. Is the permit, are you guys okaying the permit as the house is now, or is it being remodeled?
Here's what the basic structure is of the Design Review Board. The plans do not have a permit at this time. What we are approving is a step one of the permitting process, which is for the design review. If the applicant successfully completes the design review process, meaning approval, they then take their drawings, their engineering, the work to show what has been already built, and then they submit that to the building department. The building department then reviews those plans. They'll also go out to the site to see how it has been built, and if at that time they're comfortable with what's been built, there'll be plan check corrections, there'll be comments, and once they've successfully completed that process, they will be issued a building permit to get everything that they've done already so far permitted and inspected, and then everything that they need to do to finish permitted and inspected. So we're the first process just for the design of what we have out there today.
Okay. Thank you. Then I really don't have any comments. I just wanted to know what was going on. That's all. So
Very good.
So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, wait 2 seconds.
Of course. Please come back. Please help us.
stand here again? So
You
this
can
means,
stand here.
like-
As long as that little green light is on, you can talk.
I got 3 minutes? Bam, don't throw anything at me.
No.
So pretty much this is a new redesign what they have now. Or
Have you had an opportunity to look at the drawings that they're proposing?
No, I haven't.
The drawings that they're
Oh, just-
proposing
okay,
is
yeah.
right here. So when they finish this process, their hope is that the home will look like this
Okay.
from what they have today, which is a construction in progress.
Okay, as a concerned neighbor, I like that, if that helps.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any comments or anything?
No, not right now.
Okay. You probably don't have anything to add to the comments. Okay. Well, why don't we just close the public portion of the process? Mr. Aliano, why don't you begin with us on this project?
All right. I guess if I were to review this as a brand-new project, assuming that there's nothing built there, which would probably be the right approach to see if what's being proposed is acceptable. I like some of the suggestions that the applicant has made, there you are, about making the windows bigger, which are what's shown on this drawing. Then when you look, especially when you look at the pictures that were presented, it seems to me like that this corner here is quite important. And to have just a solid corner there takes away a bit originally there was the porch, and so you had a lot of relief there. And everything was kind of set back. First thing you saw was the railing, the columns. Now you have a very strong corner there. And I'm wondering whether, and it's quite typical actually, even in that, you see that in that neighborhood as well. Some of the corner window treatments where you have a post and then you turn the corner with two windows that are somewhat equal in size. And maybe you can do something else further. I know there's a bathroom there which you're not really putting any fenestration, but maybe it could have a small, opening there just as an accent. In other words, to compose the elevation so that it becomes a little bit more vibrant. But, it is a modest place, and this is not a grand house. And there aren't really, in terms of the area, everything seems to be fairly modest there. It's not there aren't that many large structures. So I would look at that at least to see what would happen if you addressed the corner with a window. And I know that you can't do anything with the stair because you're in the setback. You can't really put any kind of structure there. But I'm just thinking what else could be done there just to give it a little more interest. Could the door maybe have a side light? Is there room for a side light? Probably not. Look at the plan. I mean, you could push the door to the far right and maybe have a little side light just to make, give a little more character to the doorway. Because the doorway right now, it looks like you have a slight overhang, right? From what you're proposing, your overhang in the door, there's a little bit of an overhang. So at least there'll be that. But you can, though, it looks like from your drawing that you could actually overhang the roof almost 2/3 of the stair. About 2/3 of the stair could be covered, right? It's a shame, because if you could go just another third, you could actually bring those columns, those posts up. And the base, I had a question, maybe that could be a question later, but it looks like the base has a different color. I wonder whether that maybe could be a veneer of some sort, maybe a brick or something, just again to give a little more interest and character. I think that's all I have for now. I mean, I think if you do these kinds of things, I could support the project, given the fact that it's a small project, not very obtrusive. So for now.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Yu, do you want to take over? Thank you, sir.
I think whenever we're dealing with a project where we're looking at it after the fact, I guess we have to look at it for what it is, but also keeping in mind that we have to keep the same standards that we have throughout the other projects, and so there has to be a consistency throughout. And so I think if this project would come to us without having gone through the construction process, there's a lot of things that we would not be agreeing with, and so I think that's the way we have to approach it. Looking at the pictures, it actually is kind of strange because since it's already built to that length and there's a picture of it, you get a very good sense for what it actually is, and you don't need a 3D image to tell you what it's going to be. And it actually does come to the street quite a bit, and it becomes a huge face at the top of it, especially since it's elevated. I'd like to see some breakup of that plane. I think it's just too massive as it comes towards the street. The porch was a way of sort of a transition into sort of to the house. Now that's gone. Maybe larger overhangs. I know that there's some code issues there. Would help. Windows, definitely. The new elevations that you're showing is more appropriate, I think, for what you want to do instead of those tiny sort of off-the-shelf Home Depot windows that are there now. But I think there's a lot of work to be done still, and I would like to see it improved. And I think that roof, sort of cutting back the angle on that, it's very strange, and I don't think we would approve that as a new design, I guess, or a modified design. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Palmer?
Unless I'm looking at this incorrectly, it appears right now you have that facade across the front, one single plane. And it looks like on the plan, there is a recessed area at the entry. We've shown the door right at the face. Suggesting maybe that doorway could be pushed back because it doesn't appear to interfere with any room area at all. So if that went back a few feet, it might give a little break in that long linear look. And I agree with the other comments. One other one, there is that retaining wall in the front beyond the step area. I would hope that that would going to be addressed also because it's just broken block at this point in time, and that could tie in with the finish on the house, the stuccoing or whatever other materials are on there. And I think those are my only comments right now.
Okay. I'll just summarize it. It's a shame sometimes when additions are done and they're done not necessarily without permit, which is a problem, but not done aesthetically well, where the whole goal is just to max it out in the most inexpensive way, utilizing potentially not approvable footings and foundations where the porch was, and just get it done. And you hear the excuse often, well, the family's growing and so on, so you do it. Okay. But we're design review, and when I look at projects like this and I think, okay, did they do it, and did they have any inkling to make it a nice job? Did they have any, was there anything indicative of what was done where a little bit of architectural aesthetics was employed? And if I don't see it, it's kind of disappointing, because we all live in a community, in a neighborhood that is striving for that. And when someone does it without the rules in place, and they do it without even any consideration for the aesthetics, it's hard for, I believe, this board, which focuses on design review, to have any opportunity to help you. And when you look at what was done, it's so blatant. When you look at the neighborhood, although a modest neighborhood, what was originally there with that porch and that setback, as Mr. Yu is saying, close to the street already, and it was done well, and the scale and the timbering, that's what this was probably unincorporated Glendale in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and but even these modest homes back then did not exclude good architectural detailing. And that's a shame, because just because the neighborhood is changing and modest, and the homes have gone through a lot of remodeling, the original ones, I think when you look at some of these homes, 3740, 3742, 3749, 3750, 3745, just on and on, they have retained a lot of the original charm and character, and that has now been gone. It's a shame. I think what the designer has submitted from Stratomus in the company is good. It's not great, but it's good, and they're trying to make an improvement of what they've got. But there are still some problems with it. I would say that if you're going to go this way, if we have some changes, try to get away from vanilla colors. You know, when I look at this, and DRB doesn't usually get in colors, but I think it'll help this project if you think about the dark, the earth tones, the browns, the greens, and all that. I think it'll help incorporate some of this stuff that right now, the vanilla look of it, the French vanilla, is not working. So, anyway, that's my comment. So, yes, Mr. O'Young.
Because I really like what Ms. Palmer said. I mean, I like what you said, too. But I have something that she said struck me, and I think it's something worth expanding on from my perspective, which is that the idea of pushing the door back. The moment you do that, actually opening up a whole series of opportunities, which are that you would create now, so you're punching the opening and bringing the door in a little bit. And my thought was, because this is fairly flush right now, I mean, it is flush, it's not fairly flush, but it is flat. Once you push that in, and you take advantage of the full width of that opening, even if you have to, if necessary, you might take that wall that's here and move it over a little bit. This one is a little harder because you have the bathroom already in there.
And actually, you see a little bit of that.
I mean, you could move this wall a little bit. You could create this sort of recess for the door, but you could also break the eave line. You could do a couple of things. You could create a little, the roof over the door could actually flip up, and now you're creating, Yeah, the eave here, this is your current eave. You could actually get another eave here. Okay, and this becomes your door. But now you can start introducing some timber, maybe some corbels of some sort. You could even put a little clear story window right in plane with the door, so that now you're creating a really nice entry. And that breaks up the monotony of that, just to give back a little bit of detail. Because right now, the only detail you really have is this. I mean, I think you're doing you've improved what's there quite a bit, but we're just saying maybe we need to do a little more. And I suggested maybe dealing with the corner. What if, and it's probably hard, again, this is one of those situations where it's already built. If this wasn't built, we could easily say, do this and do that and be done with it. But now we have to deal with the fact that it's built, and which is not fair to the board. If it's possible to even get this corner in, just like down the other side, and create maybe a planting area at the corner or something to kind of relieve that corner a little bit. But definitely I would pursue
Well, it can't be
pushing
done
that
because the
door.
other side is not done either, so
Well, here,
right now it's extended all the way out.
I didn't notice that. I'm just going by the plan. It goes all the way to the back.
It will be pushed back based on
Right,
one
but
of
right now
the
it's built to the
conditions of the
same,
variance.
right?
Yeah, but they could actually do the same thing here if they
Well,
It kinda chops it
another
up.
interesting thing, and staff maybe can help us, is that with these plans, this addition that's been currently built has been built to the corner right here.
Yes.
And now they're going to have to demolish that.
They're gonna
because
have
it's
to do that.
encroaching. So
Right.
there's a lot of work that's going to,
Yeah, I mean,
unfortunately.
if they did the same on this corner, couldn't they just wrap a corner window here? Now you have you have a roof that wraps around, you create some shadows, you have a planting area there of some sort. There's things that they could do still, but I would definitely pursue the door. I really like that
Yeah,
idea.
that's a good idea.
Okay.
Because then you're creating a little bit of a little more scale with the door and the facade rather than just one plane and one eave.
Very good. Yes, Ms. Wright.
Staff was also encouraged by the larger windows, but then when we were reviewing the project, when we wrote the report, we thought that the board might want to consider, rather than one large window as seen if you look at the elevation on the right-hand side, perhaps a series of smaller windows that might be more in keeping with that residential style. We just wanted to point that out. We included that in the report, and that might be something you want to consider. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we should investigate that. I mean, the window itself, actually, it's big, but it's a little dull because there's not enough.
How do you guys feel about the
Articulation.
slider that's on the left side?
I'm sorry? It's trying to match. Right. It doesn't
The
have
slider
to.
gives us sort of a backyardish kind of look to it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yes, Ms. Palmer.
You might want to also consider that retaining wall in the front, since it's going to make the house look taller as you look at it, that there are several little stone houses on that particular street, and that particular area is conducive to utilizing the La Crescenta stone. You might consider doing that just on that front retainer, too. The one in front of the steps right now, it's block. As it goes across, it's about 2.5
They're
feet.
proposing to get rid of on each side of it.
I don't know if they're getting rid of that or not. It's right here.
I think that's the plan as well. That's a look.
Do you mind pointing that out on
Yeah, on the larger.
the larger elevations?
This one right here, I think.
I
It's
think
about-
the height of that one is here. It's this one, I think.
Looks like it. But it looks to be about 2 feet high.
No, actually, the maximum would be 18 inches per code.
I'm just saying what's
Yeah.
existing out there. So
This is the planner they're proposing. So this has to go down.
I'm just saying there could be a change of materials possibly so that it doesn't look so tall as it goes up.
Okay.
We'd like also the record to show that Mr. Simonian joined us at 5:30, but he will be probably recusing himself because of deliberations have already proceeded. So,
All right, well, I think that we've got some handful of thoughts. If you could take those handful of thoughts and try to summarize them for us.
Yes.
And if we can listen to some of those key points and add or delete or focus on some as he reads them.
All right, so what we heard from the board is there were some concerns regarding the front facade in general, including the southeast corner, which would be the right side of the front facade. Redesign would be needed on that corner, apparently. That's what we heard from the board. It could be either remedied by adding a window or probably cutting 2 feet back, just like it's done on the left side, creating a notch for roof line break as well as probably a corner window.
And, okay.
And another comment was added regarding the entrance. Perhaps the entrance could be pushed in to create a recessed entry, which would also provide a break in the roof line, and push it back and perhaps use timber of some sort, woodwork, to provide architectural features and a break in the roof line as well.
Okay.
The one. And also the planter wall in the front setback area, which is not to be more than 18 inches in height. Ms. Palmer recommended perhaps additional materials for aesthetic purposes as well as to match with the existing house. And we also heard comments regarding the base of the house, which currently is different color, and brick veneer would be appropriate. And let's see. And darker colors.
And the color would just be highly recommended. Earth tones, greens, browns, dark greens. I think that, especially in this neighborhood,
stay away from light beige color.
Yeah, that's going to help this house. Okay.
I think we should also note on there that in pushing back the entry, that possibly widening it, if we get in there.
The widening of the entry, would that be a condition or a consideration? Because it's already built, so you should take care in how...
Yes. What does that mean? Is it...
Well, it looks like it could be done maybe on the left side. I think it would help a lot to widen
Okay,
it a little.
so enlarge it to, say, a minimum of a 4-foot
It's a foot.
recess. Okay. Also, we heard a comment about the slider. As you look at the elevation, it would be on the left-hand side. Would you want to condition that is 2 swinging doors? And should the window, as you look at the elevation on the right-hand side, be conditioned to be 2 or 3 smaller windows? And then in addition to that, would you like to see divided lights, or is that configuration without any divided lights okay with you?
Okay.
The 2 windows, I think, actually, the perspective shows a little bit of that character, but I'm not sure if that's the intent. I do like the two windows. But again, I think it'd be nice to pursue, or at least look at whether that could wrap the corner.
So to have windows on both sides, you mean?
Well, you could do 2 on the side and then maybe 1 around the corner. So now you get in this kind of wrapping, especially if they look at the possibility of moving that corner in, because that will help. The concern that you brought up is, see, now you don't have to deal with this plaster plane once you push this in. This connection is not as odd, because now you cut a little bit of this out and a little bit of that out. Now that becomes just an overhang rather than just a plaster. This looks really odd.
It's the other side. Over
I'm
here.
sorry.
It's over here.
Yeah, it's right.
And
You would have a line there, and you don't have that. What's built is actually different than this.
And would you like to make that...
Lower.
Yeah.
So what's built, I think, is right here.
Just as it's conditioned on the other side to be pushed in, would you like that to be conditioned that...
well, I was
That-
gonna
If it helps.
I was going to speak to that. If you notice, they've created a bedroom in this area that's already small. And aside from the re-tearing out and rebuilding, but if you notice, if we push it back, similar to this notch right there, it really affects the usability of that bedroom significantly.
They could put a closet. I mean, if they put a knot and they could make a closet out of this wall, in other words, now your room is regular again.
Well, the interesting thing is that they're calling
no
this a
closet.
bedroom and they're calling this a bedroom, but there's no closet. So
Which means that it's not a bedroom.
right, it's
Right, but once you notch and then you create
you could put a
storage.
closet in there, right, and you could put another one right in here.
Right.
And again, we're design review the outside.
Apparently, the proportions are really...
Okay. Well, would you want that to be, are you feeling it conditioned or a
I
consideration?
think it should be a consideration, and I think the staff should make a judgment whether, I mean, if it works architecturally, I mean,
Condition?
Yeah.
Well,
well,
It's your call.
but what if it doesn't work architecturally? I mean, we have to see it. We're trying to avoid that. I mean, if you notch that and then it doesn't work from the exterior,
Okay, well, what we want to do, I mean, we want to be able to provide specific information, especially with something that's already been built. I think that's going to be super helpful. The only thing I think that we should say is the paint, and that should be a consideration because it's paint, and we don't get into paint, but it'll help this house. I believe that in this house, since it's already built, specific things that we want done is going to be helpful. I bet probably for staff and even the applicant, knowing that that's what they got to do. So we're here. We'll support. We'll listen if you want it, and we'll see if we can vote on it.
now the other side is conditioned. We have
That's because it's in the setback.
So let's do it.
Okay. So
And it has a
Mr. Oleano
condition.
would want the set to have a little nook in there, and would you want a certain the same? So we're currently at a 2 foot.
2 foot.
So 2 foot notch on both sides.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
I would also add, that notch could be a planting area too. There could be a little, both sides, I think. I don't know if they can do on the other side because of the
Okay.
condition.
Well, why don't we read what you've put here, and then if
Actually, you pull the whole thing back, and then you have a little ground plane planting area. You could put a shrub there of some sort.
why don't you read what you have noted right now one more time? And
Yes.
if one of the
And
members
while I read, I would like to also clarify whether it's a condition or recommendation,
That's
because we
correct.
didn't touch on a few of them
That's
yet.
correct.
So,
So there, you had a couple of them, and then see if one of the members here of the board can support.
all
it
right.
and bring it
So
up.
I think it's already clear that the right side corner, a 2 foot notch, is a added condition by the board. And as far as how it's being treated with windows and fenestrations, you would like to leave that for the staff to work with the applicant?
Well, we made several
you have any
suggestions. right?
particular-
That you double window and wrap the corner, or you do double windows. I'd say, I think if you're going to turn the corner, I think you should have a window there.
Very good. Turn the corner with window.
Turn the corner with window. Okay.
Okay?
And there was one more comment added, which I didn't mention earlier, adding a bathroom window to the front. And I didn't get to that earlier, and I would like to know if that was added as a condition or
To do what now?
to add a bathroom window to the front, because there's a bathroom in the front.
But a window, not a bathroom. Not a window in the bathroom.
Right.
No, I'm talking about the
back.
front. There's a bathroom
No,
in
I
the
don't
front.
think there
and
should be a
it
window
was
there. That's right where you're working up there.
Very good. Okay, they just got to put a ceiling fan in.
Okay. All right.
Yep. Okay.
All right. So, and the colors, as far as using darker earth tone colors, that was also a condition.
No, that would be
A recommendation?
highly recommended.
Okay.
And the operative word would be natural earth toned, darker scale colors.
All right. And pushing.
Another thing, when they do wrap that corner,
Mm-hmm.
that corner needs to be part of the window. In other words, it needs to be a post that gets painted the same as the window. It's not a little plaster corner.
Okay.
In other words, the window should wrap like a true corner window with a post at the corner, not a little plaster post.
So you're saying sort of like a period, where the window that's in the front is an integral architectural.
Correct. Yeah, with the post. You can do that very easily. You put windows, and then the post gets clad and painted.
All right.
Okay. All right. So why don't you just summarize the bullet points
Okay.
so we get them right?
All right. So we touched on the corner,
Got it.
and the other one was another main comment was about the entry, recessing the entry and widening it by another foot
Excellent.
to break up the eave line.
That's a requirement, right?
That these are all requirements.
Yes, these are all conditions. And additional comments were made regarding the front, the planter wall at the front and the base of the building.
Okay. And then the base of the building and the planter wall, you wanted to give them options of either brick or natural stone. That's what I heard.
Leave it as an option. I mean, I don't,
either brick or natural stone, but put in a contrast material.
That's fine.
And if the wall in front, that retaining wall, is a natural stone, the base could also be a brick veneer? Okay.
All right, and the last comment I heard was about the sliding door at the front, perhaps turning it into two
Swinging
windows.
doors, I think.
Swinging doors.
Is that okay with everybody? Not a slider.
I had one more
The
question.
windows that are being proposed, the ones that we just talked about, are those, what are they proposing? What kind of windows?
Fiberglass.
At the front.
At the front, but what's the operation? Are they,
Whatever you want.
They are.
it
Would
looks
you,
like there's sliders all the way around. Are they they're all brand new windows all around the house?
well, the proposal is for fiberglass windows at the front. If you'd like for the ones that are also visible at the side to be fiberglass, we could have that conditioned. And it's tough to say what's a new window and what's not, because all of the work has been done on the house. We believe that they're all, the ones that exist out there now are vinyl, and that's why staff had recommended the ones, at least in the front, be changed out to fiberglass. If you'd like all the ones that are visible from the street to be fiberglass, we can condition it in that manner.
Well, I would think, at least it's, we have these right here. There's only two more here. It'd be nice for all that would be the same. And if you're going to do two windows next to each other, it'd be nice to have double hung. That way you get a nice rhythm. And I would do the same for the bedrooms, as provided that those are wide enough to meet the minimum rating or fire escape.
So you're saying that any window that's visible from the street should be...
I would say this corner, the other side there really aren't any until you get to the back.
So the front windows and the windows on the
Driveway.
east elevation.
I think there's actually two on the other side, on the west elevation as well.
But the new one would be a third one, right?
Right. So you're saying windows that are on the south elevation, east elevation, and west elevation be changed to vinyl-clad windows, double hung.
Fiberglass.
Fiberglass, sorry. Fiberglass, double hung. Okay?
Yeah, I
That's
think
it.
that would make this a lot
Okay.
better.
I'll add that as a condition as
Okay,
well.
those are all conditions.
I just have a question. They've called out the roofing, a new roofing on there. I don't know if it's the existing new roofing or proposed new roofing, but the back portion, I know we don't see that. You've got two flat roofs. I don't know if those are going to be rolled roofing or shingles. One shows the shingles and one shows nothing. So I just think they ought to at least blend and be consistent, being both flat roofs.
Okay, so when they install the new roofing, what I see here in the note, it says new roofing to match existing. So that would propose... that
They're a
the-
flat area. You can't put the shingles on a flat roof.
Right,
So whatever the material is, it needs to blend and be matching.
in the flat area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, do we have a motion?
All right, so we got those items. Do we have a motion at this time?
I make a motion to approve per all the comments and requirements we listed.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the project with comments and conditions. This is a roll call. Mr. Aliano?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Yu?
Yes.
And Chairman Insua?
No.
All right, motion passes 3-1.
Okey doke. Our next project Okay, our next project is case number 1 PDR 2010-019. Address is 1232 North Pacific Avenue. Why don't we have the staff presentation?
Good evening, board members. The next project before you with the case number 1, PDR 2010-019, located at 1232 North Pacific Avenue, is an 8-unit apartment building with 18 parking spaces in a semi-subterranean parking garage with access from Pacific Avenue. All the existing structure on the site, including the 3 detached units, the detached garages, and the commercial building fronting Pacific Avenue, will be demolished. The project site is the last commercially zoned lot on the east side of Pacific Avenue, north of which single-family lots are located. The proposed project will provide the transition between the residential and commercial zone along this side of the street. The building is a minimum 20 feet from the street due to setback requirements, allowing landscaping to separate the building from the street, providing a visual screen and buffer between the sidewalk and the building. This provides a pleasing result for the occupant of the building as well as pedestrian along Pacific Avenue. Currently, there is no street setback on this site. The proposed common open space is located in the northern and eastern portion of the lot, adjacent to the single-family neighborhood. This configuration provides a buffer between the building and the adjacent single-family homes to the north and east. The common open space is designed with a series of linear elements, walls, benches, and landscaping. This layered approach creates a unified space and flow along the units, quite usable and accessible from the rear of each unit. With regards to the boundary wall, additional planting for screening purposes should be provided with vines that will grow up and over the wall. A landscape strip with trees and a variety of decorative shrubs are proposed along the south side of the development with a walkway leading to the recess entry of each unit. The project provides a well-designed transition between the commercial development to the south and residential development to the north. Across the street from the subject property, there are 2- and 3-story multi-family buildings as well as single-story commercial buildings. The commercial building to the south of the project is a single-story building, and since it is elevated above the street level, it appears taller than a typical single-story building. The project appears to fit within the neighborhood in terms of mass and scale, since there are a mixture of building height and a variety of building types and style. The repetitive forms which compose each unit create a rhythm which breaks up the building three-dimensionally on both the north and south elevations. Small recessed patios provide separate entrances to each unit on the south side. The well-designed projection of the second floor over the first floor provides a shelter over the entrance ports. Stair elements with metal pitch roof are incorporated, providing desired break in the length of the new building on the south side. On the north elevation, the proposed balconies overlooking the common open space create a layered effect for this facade. The use of different material creates a differentiation in wall surface, preventing the appearance of a long linear mass. On both north and south elevation, the emphasis is on the vertical element of each unit, suggesting the individuality of the unit, which breaks horizontal mass of the building. Since the project is a residential use in a commercial zone, it had to comply with the most restrictive requirement of each zone. The project satisfied the residential setback requirements, which are more restrictive than commercial. As a result of all these elements, the proposed building is designed with an appropriate mass and scale. No specific style is associated with the neighborhood. The proposed apartment building is designed in a modern contemporary style. The building is designed to appear as a series of individual units rather than a single monolithic building. Each unit has a separate private entry. The building has a flat roof on the south side and a shed roof on the north elevation, which does not elevate above the flat roof. Less glazing is proposed on the south elevation, which faces commercial building, than the north elevation, which faces residential homes. This configuration has allowed the units to have more transparency toward the residential than commercial building. The details and design of the building are consistent with the proposed style and are functional as well as aesthetically pleasing. For example, the projection of the second floor or over the first floor of each unit provides shelter over the entrances and breaks in the building facade. In these ways, the material, fenestration, design, and details come together to reinforce the overall architectural and three-dimensional design, while providing a well-functioning multifamily dwelling appropriate to its site. As stated above, the project is well designed in its site planning, three-dimensional architectural design and details and material. There are a few recommendations the board may wish to consider. Number one, the boundary wall around the perimeter shall be a minimum of 5'6" from the finished grade of the project. The material should be poured in place concrete with formwork to create a texture or decorative concrete masonry units. Number two, additional landscaping should be provided at the north boundary wall to provide a more substantial buffer. Vines should be planted along the north and east boundary walls. Number three, consideration should be given to the design of the east elevation so it is better integrated with the overall design. The staff recommends approval of the project, and this concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Any comments or questions we have for staff? Thank you. Good report. Let's open the session. I only have one speaker card, so if you're here to speak on the project, there are speaker cards here that you want to fill out and provide to staff so we can have you come up. The first applicant we have is the designer, Mr. Alan Malekian. Your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Alan Malekian. My office is 2255 Honolulu Avenue, Montrose, California. This particular project has gone through many different variations, and being that it is a commercial zone, we were allowed to have a commercial use on the ground floor, have a residential on the second floor. Due to the concern of the residential zones in the north and the east, we decided to eliminate and reduce the mass that it was going to generate if we would have gone with the commercial on the ground floor, having parking on the ground floor, and then have the residential parking in the basement and having the units above it. So we decided that we go with complete residential, and that has taken quite a bit of transformation. We were allowed to have 9 units. We decided to go with 8 units to make the units a little bit more functional and also give us a little bit more open space around the perimeter. The design, obviously, is something to my heart, and I really enjoy the result of what we came up with. Being that we do have a residential in the north and the east, we have additional 5-foot setbacks. So what we did was, as it was noted on the staff report, we are providing a perimeter wall to create as a retaining, and using that 5-foot space between the subterranean wall and the property line wall. Being a natural soil, we actually stepped the deck down to be able to carry the dirt over. So basically using that space as complete all landscape area and having pavers and all the substantial trees would be planted on the natural soil. So there's some gymnastics that we're doing on the basement area to step the deck down. The same thing we're doing on the south side. We're stepping the deck down to be able to create a little bit more flatter grass area, be able to have a little bit more open, thus reducing the mass facing from the parking lot of the south property looking north. Same thing we're doing on the east side. The units are screened behind the decorative element that we're adding on the top. We're using a lot of products there that we're going to try to use recycled materials and materials that ultimately can help us go towards some certification, some level of certification on that. The main purpose of having larger openings on the north side was to again utilize north light rather than entering from the having all the entrances come in from the north part and having the entrances and facing all the openings towards the south, which is more of a commercial use. This way we're going to utilize the north light and also the view. I wanted to comment on the 3 items that staff recommended. The first one, not a problem. We'll take care of the retaining wall around the perimeter. That's not a problem. Additional landscaping, look forward hearing your comments, and not a problem as far as adding additional landscape. I'm not sure how much of a landscape we can add between the property line and the retaining wall, but we can definitely buffer that within our property rather than between the property line and the building line. So I'm not sure how much that can happen. After I got a chance to review this 2 days ago of the comments, I went ahead and did a kind of small little alternate of the east elevation. Take a look at it, see what you think. As represented. What we did was, again, all the patio doors and all the windows that are facing north are all consistent and it's repetitive. And if you look at the east, there are clear story windows facing east. What I've done is I've removed the clear story on the right side and essentially used the same detail that we use on the west side. Use the same kind of a detail, brought it back to the east, and carried that corner window, and use the patio door towards the east. It actually worked out a little bit better because the door that was facing the staircase, it works out a little bit better, and we can use the east side as more of a common area for the last unit than the front of the unit itself. So other than that, I think I'm here and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, sir.
I have one question just regarding that pristine oak tree that's on the...
Yeah.
That shows a fence like it's outside the property.
Well, it's not outside of the property. Actually, if you look at the landscape plan, what we try to do is we try to maintain that section undisturbed. So any kind of a dirt that we want to add on to be able to use that as part of our common outdoor space, we created a fence wall that is outside of the boundary that was given to us by the arborist, Jan Scow. And so he gave us a parameter of minimum of 5 feet from the trunk and be able to create a kind of a buffer. So that section actually is going to be lower as what it is as a natural what's there. So the deck as it comes around, it's going to be almost a 3.5 foot higher around, or 3 foot. So that kind of gives the buffer there, so people don't fall over.
Could you talk a little bit about the materials that you're using? It looks like there's 4 main ones. You have the concrete, you have the wood, you have the white plaster, and then you have
the steel,
the metal.
Yeah.
I just want to give you a chance to sort of kind of walk us through how you determined where they're placed and how they're used. And I do it because, I mean, I know that in some of the projects that you've done in the past, they've been very conceptually sort of, intriguing in how you used them and how you shaped them, and I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that.
Well, let me walk up there.
Yeah.
It's a great question, and something came about maybe about a year ago, so I kind of remember. The way we came about this is essentially what I did was I didn't want to create this long linear look. And one of the options and thoughts that we had with staff and we looked at was, do we really like this, and do we want to kind of break this repetitiveness by flipping them? Maybe a couple of them are facing each other, a couple of them are not. It just didn't look right. It just didn't look right. So what I've done is, the materials are representing volumes and spaces that I wanted to create. I just like to create boundaries of spaces without really enclosing them with materials. So what I've done is elements of mass with a void. A mass with and each one of these little volumes and fenestrations or juxtaposition of the volume, the facade, I wanted to create with different materials. The warmer color, we've tried to use as much wood as we can towards the north, and the cladding was actually it was the metal roofing. Creating this type of a mass on this side, I thought that it would be a lot more massive facing the north side, facing the residential. So I wanted to create a little bit more, less, not mass, but less of a volume that it created looking towards the commercial. So all of these different materials came about, and no material that I have really comes together in different planes that match the same. So that's another thing that I wanted to use. So if I have a wood that has a volume, I didn't want to put another volume of wood that it's different volume. I wanted to have that separated by wood, glass, plaster. Plaster, glass, wood. And that's what it happens. So if on this case, if we have plaster, glass, wood, then I wouldn't have, even though if this is going to be in a different plane, I didn't want to start again with wood, glass, plaster, so I didn't want that. So it's just the repetitiveness of different materials that and it's just pure taste, so, and the bottom line is.
Very good. Any other questions for while he's up here? Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Malekian while he's here? Anything? Okay, we'll probably call you back. Okay. It's a good project. I have no more speaker cards, but all of us received 2 emails, or the city received 2 emails, and one of them, a gentleman indicated that he would attend, but I don't think he attended. So if there's no more speakers that we have, I'll close the session, the open public session. Okay. Why don't we start with you, Ms. Palmer?
Okay, as usual, I think this architect comes with a very nice project and interesting. But I have a comment or concern on the south elevation with the reflection of the white plaster in these windows, that there's going to be a lot of sun. These are bedrooms, I think, and there'll be a lot of heat coming in there. Whereas on the north elevation, he's showing some canopies. So I'm wondering if there would be a way to cut down on that heat, because I think it's going to be a problem. I have a few comments on the landscape. I would want to make sure when you go through this plan again that you specify the varieties of some of the plants, like the nandinas and the rosemaries, because some are ground covers, some are tall, have the same name. You want to make this right. So I think you need to pay attention to that. And that maybe in the front where you have the crepe myrtle and the other tree that make the crepe myrtle a larger size, because I think it's going to be an 8-foot tree that's dwarfed if you don't increase that to a 36-inch box. And you've got a lot of 36-inch box. You have a lot of crepe myrtles along the side, and with your color combination, they're called out as red. And I don't think that's going to be a clash. You might want to consider the white or some color that blends with it rather than stands out. And the only other comment with that is that you've got irrigation around that oak tree to adjust that so you don't have the irrigation where it shows. And I think those are my comments for now.
Thank you. Mr. Yu, would you mind continuing?
Sure. I think this is it's another example of sort of a modern contemporary building that brings to the table sort of a credibility in the sense that it's got a concept and an idea behind it, and masses are sort of created out of that. The reason I wanted you to sort of talk about the materials, I know that in some of the past projects, I really enjoyed sort of the play of the materials that you've had. On this one, I think there's too much going on. I think there's a lot going on in there. I'm not saying it's, I guess, bad in a sense, but there's a little bit of the use of materials and kind of how, assigned. And it was good to hear you talk about it because it gives me a little better sense for it. But I guess looking at it from without that explanation, I had a hard time kind of wrapping sort of my mind around it because different materials were sort of doing different things depending on where they were. And so it was good to hear, I guess, sort of how you were establishing these things. I just felt like some of the materials maybe could have been a little pure in its use in a sense that, if it's something that's going to be up in the air, sort of elevated and creating a mass, then later on it turns a corner and it becomes sort of a base level material, those kinds of things. But these are just to be able to talk, I guess, conceptually about the project. A couple suggestions. I think the canopy, I think there should be something in the south. I think it makes a lot more sense. It gives it a more pure sort of ideal to the building itself, too. It's very functional in its uses. I'm assuming that maybe the canopies in the northern portion, they were maybe to cover from rain or something like that instead of sun, I guess. That was the idea. And I think I would have maybe used the metal to sort of off-play the more industrial or commercial side instead of the other way around. But that's sort of up to you and what you want to do with it. So, but I think the west elevation is very successful in breaking up the mass and sort of creating that street level, where you're going from sort of the two-story building and then the single story on the one side and transitioning that. But I mean, all in that, I think the northern part where the public spaces are, you've sort of increased it to allow for better use on the northern part. You've definitely broken up the massing with glass and building, trying to use a softer material at the lower levels. I think I'd like to hear what you guys have to say, but I think I'm leaning towards, doing the project with some changes to it.
Okay. Mr. Somebody, why don't you jump in?
Well, I'd like to start off by congratulating the architect for what I believe is a job well done. It's refreshing to see well-designed, thought-out multifamily buildings and commercial buildings come in front of our board. We just tend to see so much of that typical multifamily where it just struggles to find a style, or if it does find a style, it's not quite developed to the point that it's intriguing or interesting or even exemplary in any way. This project, I could tell, has a lot of work behind it. You could tell somebody has sat there and has designed it over and over again to come up with shapes and forms and common open spaces and entrances and light and air. All these factors have been thought out, and the materials have been used in such a way where the mass and the bulk of the building have just gone away. So it's interesting to me to look at it, and I enjoy talking about it just because it really doesn't feel like a large multifamily project within the site. And although an 8-unit project is not a large project to begin with, however, in this context, when we're talking about Pacific and we have some residential directly adjacent to it, the mass and bulk of a building certainly becomes the main focal points. So in that sense, I believe the designer and architect and the firm have done a great job in breaking up mass and bulk and have come up with a good example here. Furthermore, I appreciate the fact that it steps back from its northern boundary line, and as much as it can, it respects the single-family home to its north. We have had some correspondence, of course, where some residents are concerned about a multifamily building being placed in this specific parcel. That said, it is a commercial property, and so the owner could have decided to go with a commercial building, a pure commercial building, in which case the setbacks would have been less than what they are now, and there would have been a much higher frequency of traffic going in and out of a commercial project, say. For example, the commercial property at the corner of Starbucks, it's Pacific and Stalker, where the Starbucks is. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of traffic that goes in and out of that center. In a given hour, it could be, 40 cars to 100 cars that go in and out, in peak times. And then you have the Pacific Market, the same issue on Pacific, farther south on this side, that has a tremendous amount of traffic coming in and out. So the same could be said for the Lord's Bakery shopping center, which is corner of Dryden and Pacific. So you have these commercial uses that are just overwhelmed with traffic going in and out. And so a residential property actually will have less traffic comparatively to a commercial project. And so I agree with the CUP that was given. I think that was done appropriately in allowing residential uses on the ground floor as well. So overall, I think it's well thought out. The east elevation that's presented to us seems to work better in that, like Mr. Malakian said, the door opens up directly to the open space. So that's nice in itself. And so, overall, I support this project.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Mr. Eliana, would you mind?
Thank you. Some very good comments. I'd also like to congratulate the architect for a very nice job. Projects like this are very, for me, they're difficult to critique because it's so well thought out that you're trying to really critique something that has a lot of items already resolved. I'm sure we could ask to tweak this and make a little refinement there, but is that really the point? I think the point for me is that this is a very interesting location, a very interesting site, very challenging problems of creating a lot that's fairly narrow and long, and to put a building that has to accommodate multifamily. I mean, that's a challenge already. And when an architect goes this far to sort of show that it can actually, a project like this could actually be successful, it's difficult for me to just say, let's change this, let's change that, because when you look at it all the way around, and I understand, you could probably scrutinize certain things, but I don't think that it's really necessary, because it's the most successful aspect of the project, I think, is the west elevation, is the street, which sets up the language for the whole building. And once you solve that problem, I think you have it pretty much made, because you've done that. You've taken that language and now adapted that language to a rhythmic system of units. They're basically the same. And when you look at the individual units, besides the first one, which is the one at the street, which is the one that's different, because it has to be different. It's a street view, and it has more going on. It has the elevator, it has the entry to the garage, so it's expected to be different. But once you look at the other ones, which are basically the same, and you look at them individually, because in a sense you will never be able to see this project in its entirety the way it's shown here. I mean, nobody is going to look at this building at a bird's eye like this, because once you enter that gate, you're going to look at these entryways, as you approach the building. So what's important to understand is that you need to have one of these units well balanced, well designed, and then you repeat it, which is what you've done. Each unit in itself works. I mean, it has a variety of materials, and for me, sort of to create interest and to create articulation, I think the material change works. And so I can only really say that it'll be nice to see this thing built, because it would add a lot to the community. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I think a lot of good comments have been made and a lot of things have been said, and I will leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Trying to gather my thoughts. Also, congratulations. I think the architectural assembly of forms, materials, space, volumes, both vertical, horizontal, how it sits on the site, how it relates to those elements of the site, are done very well. And it's a good example, I think, of contemporary, we're talking about it this afternoon, July 22nd, I think today, is submitted architecture. Sometimes people say that's a modern architecture, contemporary architecture, and it's sometimes used as an excuse for lack of good design. This is a good design. Okay. Interesting, though, because if this project wasn't designed as well, I think, as it is, and I'll get into some of the details, I could not approve this project, because so often narrow, deep lots, putting in 8, 7, 9 units in the years that we've looked at them, rarely successfully do it and succeed, because you're asking a very narrow lot to create, I believe, a overall general architectural well-being of livability, and it fails always on the livability. So if I look at the common areas, and this is only architecture, how it affects the architecture, when I think of the common areas and the lack of common areas and the way that you would normally live in a high-density residential, I don't think this common areas do it successfully. The barbecue area is relatively thin. It's behind someone's outdoor living, and you can see it. And so so if it was one of the stuff that we've been seeing over the last 6, 7, 8 years, where you see them, they tear down a house here in off of Pacific or Central, and they shoehorn this stuff in, they always fail. But where this thing succeeds is that you can't look at the living style, for me, of this development and where it's located as a typical condominium or high-end apartments where people living here are going to want the backyards with the patio and all that. It's a contemporary urban commercial setting that's different. So those areas that I think it doesn't successfully achieve it, common areas, walkways bisecting the common areas behind someone's living area here, I throw that out. Because the architecture and what the architecture does for the site plan successfully achieves what the architecture of the building for me is telling me. The landscape, the walls, the setting is now what I called, and you're going to probably roll in your grave as a landscape architect, but I called it artscape. The sites, when you look at these perspectives, they really become artscapes. And you can see how that landscaping is becoming something that's visual outside of where I'm living. And if I lived here, I wouldn't be seeing myself flipping hamburgers on that exterior grill, but I would enjoy great lighting, great artscape, great landscape, nice walls. So don't give me a barbecue outside. I don't use them. I'm too cool for that. When I live here, I don't need that. But I do want, it's not architecture, a grill inside. When I'm flipping my cool hamburgers with my wine, I'm doing it inside. This project does it so well. And in its setting, it wouldn't do it in a pure, I don't think this would be a great pure residential setting, but it's right on that fringe, commercial, residential, and like you're saying, it's almost in the inner city. And for all that, I think it does it well. I can see myself walking down these walkways, which are art, and the lighting and the landscape that you're going to put there is going to be just as exciting as the architecture. So for me, so I throw out that thinking, well, we need a barbecue area, we need a kids' play area, and all that other stuff. Not on this project. So I love it. I can see we're on the south windows. The sun is going to be beating down on those. So what? Get high-performance glass. For me, by putting in anything here is going to ruin that solid C that's being created that the architect talked about. It's that solid C that's that form. By coming out, for me, in the horizontal section in here, loses the integrity of that solid C. I would just say put high-performance glass in there, and you'll take care of the increased gain of heat. I wouldn't want to do that, but if we as a board think that's important, so be it, because I love that hard C. So I think it's a great project. I think we all feel that it's a good project. There may be some things that we may want to comment on, but I think overall it's done well, and especially in its setting. So I think it's a good project. So anyway, do we have any more comments after we've heard everybody on the board and their thinking? Anything you want to add to it, Mr. Aliano? Anything else that what you've heard, all our comments?
I'll just say I agree with you. I like that hard C, but I think it's so flush that that's going to be a problem if maybe those windows were recessed a few inches or 6 inches, which creates a shadow line. It's not going to create shade, but at least a shadow line. You still maintain that C, and you get an added shadow.
Excellent. Okay, well, there's probably been a lot of comments. Have you been able to sort of like block in the comments that we have that would be more to alter the design? Why don't we hear some of the things you...
Right. I've got 3 comments. First, south elevation, which large area of glazing can cause heat to the bedroom. Canopy can be considered. But then the last comment was that the windows on the south elevation can be recessed. So I don't know whether either of them are...
I think I was saying just a consideration to
okay.
address the heat problem.
Right.
The designer can take care of that.
Okay. And the second comments were about the plants such as rosemary and other ground cover should be used. And with regards to the Krat murder tree, the consideration was to choose other colors rather than the red colors.
I think what I said was just to look at the plant material and make sure that the individual varieties of those plants are what they want to use, not because one particular plant can come in different shapes, sizes, and it's not specified on the plan.
Okay.
And was the 36-inch box for, I think it was only one of the crepe myrtles?
One crepe myrtle on the front elevation.
At the front.
So just increase the size of that one.
Okay, and then...
there was one comment I didn't make that I noticed. They've got all the plant material is basically drought tolerant except the horsetail, which is a narrow reed type, which is used for water plants, and I know you've used it on many of your projects. But since it is a high water use, you might consider maybe a tall grass to soften the look. And
yeah, because I think that would probably not be on the list that we have to choose from. We also heard from board member Yu some comments about the materials, but nothing specific, it seemed, that you wanted to
Right, it was more of a discussion
add.
that I wanted to have.
Okay. And also, board member Yu mentioned a canopy placed on the south, but then we heard definitely no canopy on the south, so, and I'm seeing head shaking, so just the broad comment to address the heat gain for the building permit set.
Thank you. Anything else that we have as a board to talk about or what we saw? Do we need to have it summarized one more time before we see if there's a motion, or comfortable with what's said at this point?
I'm okay with it.
Okay. Anyone want to entertain a motion for the project?
Move for approval.
Second?
Who seconded?
And Mr. Simonian seconded.
Okay, this is the, Mr. Aliano motion to approve the project, and Mr. Simonian seconded. This is the roll call. Mr. Aliano,
Yes.
Mr. Mr. Simonian,
Yes.
Mr. Yu,
Yes.
Ms. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Insua.
Yes.
The project passes by 5 votes. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we need a quick break?
No.
Oh, yes, Mr.
No, it just got, but you guys were, the west or east elevation that I give, you guys didn't comment on that. Is that something?
Yeah, that's why I was just asking. Do we approve this one or do we approve?
I think either one's fine. I mean,
Okay, thank you, sir.
And
Take a moment here.
And-
Well, we,
also, we heard no irrigation around the oak tree, so we want to make sure to get that in.
okay, so just for a moment of discussion, we voted all in approving, but there are two elevations and perspective.
In regards to the east elevation, looking at what was proposed, the clear story window up top and the fact that it was different than the other facades, and because it is facing, some of the uses directly to its east, I thought was a good solution. However, I think it's up to the Mr. Malakian how he chooses to proceed. If he thinks it's better to orient a window, a door, actually towards the east in the common area, and that might be more usable, then I think I'd be okay with either scenario.
I agree with that.
Ms. Wright?
And there were also a couple of conditions added to the report that Board Member applicant Malakian said he would also include. So we'll make sure those are included.
For purposes, I believe we should just go ahead and enter into a new motion, make
I
sure
would
that all the
concur.
board member, that the motion made by Board Member Aliano, seconded by Board Member Simonian, that you would specifically address those in your motion and have the board vote just to...
I would concur. So why don't we do the vote again? And that what we're doing is that, if I understood correctly, both elevations that have been submitted concerning the east elevation, was it?
East elevation, correct.
Would be approved, and that the architect will explore whichever one is good. Secondly, that the other conditions that were submitted by the board as their review would also be approved, and then the ones that we reviewed.
Oh, and the irrigation.
And the irrigation around the oak tree.
Right. So this is the roll.
Forgive,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
let's have another motion.
Yes, I move for approval with the stated conditions.
And I'll second.
Did you second again?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay, the motion was made by Mr. Aliana, seconded by Mr. Simonian. This is a roll call. Mr. Aliana,
Yes.
Mr. Simonian,
Yes.
Mr. Yu,
yes.
Ms. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Insua.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do we need a quick little break?
To you?
Everyone needs a break? I'm okay. Yeah, sure. Good. Are you good? No, we're good. All right, let's just keep going. We have only one project to go. Shouldn't be that long. Okay, let me do a little housekeeping here. Okay, the next project that we're going to review this evening is case number 1 PDR 2010-014-A. Project address is 3918 Barrett Way. And ready for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As mentioned, this is case 1-PDR 2010-014A, located at 3918 Barrett Way. This project is a first-time submittal for final review. This particular project that you have before you is a proposal to legalize 7 items. The first item is an 836 square foot addition at the rear of the single-family house. Second is 1 new dormer on the front portion of the roof. Third a new front entry. Fourth, the new metal tile roof. Fifth, covered patio at the rear of the house. Sixth, there's some other changes to the front facade, which include material finishes and windows. And seventh, construction of a detached deck at the rear of the lot. The existing property is developed with a 2,172 square foot, two-story single-family residence with an attached 407 square foot garage, both of which are built in 1963. Property is in an interior lot that is relatively flat and has a lot area of 10,857 square feet. There is an active city attorney code enforcement case against the property for the items that I had just listed. The case was initiated in 2009 when the project had already been completed. In order to be legalized, the proposed changes must go through the design review board process. Otherwise, the illegal construction must be removed and the house returned to its original condition. The proposed site plan design is somewhat similar to the original site plan, with the exception of the first and second floor expansion at the rear, the covered patio and detached deck. The existing two-car garage will remain at its current location. The placement of the home addition is consistent with the majority of the homes in the neighborhood and with the design guidelines. The neighboring property's living areas and yard are not visible from the deck due to the existing landscaping, adjacent building locations, and topography of the surrounding properties. The detached deck appears to not have substantial impact on the neighborhood due to its location, the depth of the lots to the south, and the overall topography. The massing of the house as a whole is compatible with the surrounding homes in the neighborhood and consistent with the intent of the guidelines. However, staff has concerns with the size, location, and height of the dormer and design of the new gable over the entry. With modifications, these conditions can be appropriate to the overall massing and scale to the front. As proposed, the items being legalized are generally consistent and compatible with the original home style with regards to materials and colors. However, the way in which the dormer sits on the roof is not well integrated with the existing architecture. The windows at the front are not considered high-quality material. In addition, the roofing that was installed appears to be inconsistent with the overall building. In order to be consistent with the home's textures and materials as described, staff is recommending conditions be put in place to help the house complement the neighborhood and be more consistent with the intent of the design guidelines and provide an integrated design. The proposal represents compliance with the zoning code requirements. With staff recommended modifications, the resulting house elements will appear more cohesive and more consistent with itself. For these reasons, staff recommends that the project be approved with the following conditions. And their staff has 6 recommended conditions. Would you like me to read through those?
Yes, please.
The first condition the staff is recommending is for the dormer that it be reduced, or the width of the dormer be reduced and or shifted away from the side of the roof toward the left. Alternatively, the dormer could be replaced with a flat skylight. Second, as it relates to the front facade, to add stone veneer at the base of the front of the house under the windows, similar to that on the front post. Alternately, remove the stone veneer altogether. Third, windows, that they should replace the windows that are visible from the street or at the front to either not have grids or to have external grids. Fourth, modify the extensions on the beams on the entry such that they are either removed or simplified. Fifth, enlarge the columns under the front entry to be more consistent with the detailing of the other posts at the front of the house. And 6, which is a code requirement, enclose the detached deck at the rear as required by code, and this is the underspace underneath the flooring of the deck, with wood or hardy plank with a color that complements the hillside. And this area underneath the deck is recommended to be set back about 12 inches to create a shadow line under the deck. That concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for any questions, and the applicant and owner are in the audience.
Do we have any questions for staff in their presentation?
Yes. Mr. Collins, in reference to the history of this case and so forth, can you comment a bit as to, in chronological order, as to when the city found out about the issues and so forth, and what has occurred since then?
Also in the audience, we have Thomas Solar from Neighborhood Services, who is the case inspector. You might be able to elaborate on that more.
Okay, if you can come up, sir. One of the things I want to say, which I think will help the general public, both here and maybe watching this presentation, is that the Design Review Board reviews projects for the design that we look at, whether it's been built or not built, preferably not built, and you're getting approval prior to building. And that issues, and we have it written here for all of us, the issues concerning whether, even though we may think the design that's been built and its design is appropriate, and we approve it for the design review, that doesn't mean that the project has been approved and you're finished. It still needs to go through the Department of Building and Safety. They have very stringent reviews and site inspections to see what was built, if it complies with very stringent building code requirements. So this is just the beginning of the process, and it's focusing on design and design. So just wanted to get that out. Yes, sir, your name and department you work for.
My name is Thomas Solar. I'm the Neighborhood Services Inspector at that time for the area up in the Verdugos. Just a brief recap. The issue was actually brought to our attention on April 22nd of 2009. Actually, Building and Safety had gone out to the site responding to a complaint of the new deck only that was being constructed without permits. That referral was actually followed up, came to our office, and then after reviewing all the documents, aerials, and photos that I could have done, it was evident that other changes had occurred to the property to include, as Mr. Collins had mentioned, the roofing, the dormers, and the changes that had occurred. The the owner was notified in writing from our department on July 13th of 2009 relating to some of these issues, relating to the issues that are here today. I was able to meet with him at the property, and after we did a walkthrough, I think today's report of Mr. Collins details all the existing issues at the property that were noted by us and brought to the attention of the owner.
Thank you, sir. For any questions or anything that we may have for the gentleman?
In your knowledge or per your observations and whatnot, were there any structural drawings that were prepared or any kind of architectural drawings that were prepared for the addition and also the construction of the deck?
Well, as I mentioned, when we had arrived and the complaint was brought to our attention, the deck was already completed and built. So I had nothing to compare it to. I've seen no drawings and so forth for the deck. As I mentioned, after reviewing some past permits that did exist for some remodeling, determination of the changes were compared to those past permits, and that's how we came upon the modification that had been done without permits.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. I've got 2 speaker cards here, but there's more people in the audience. If you want to speak on this case, we have speaker cards up here. If you could fill it out and hand it to staff here. Okay. The first person I have here is the applicant, Mr. Ron Madalian.
My name is Ron Mandelian. I'm the applicant for the project. First of all, I wanted to bring to your attention, as you were speaking about how chronologically changes happen. In '97, before the current owner bought the house, there was a 370-something square foot addition permit pulled for the rear addition It's been constructed but never finalized. We have old inspection report card, which was inspected halfway and something happened back then. It's never been finished. So that's part of this legalization right now. Regarding the roof and style, I would like to bring to your attention again. So this is a 1940s, 1950s district neighborhood of Dunsmore. Per single-family neighborhood analysis, there is no prevailing architectural style here. And when there was a decision made to change the old asphalt shingle roof with the metal stone-coated roof, according to manufacturer specifications, this was the closest thing that can be in a better quality that can replace the old shingle roof. And I have some samples to show you. I'll show you once I'm done how similar they are. They have a little more volume to it than the flat shingle roof, but the texture of it and color of it is almost identical. Regarding the staff recommendation to put stone, to make the columns over the entry a little bigger, I think it's a very good recommendation, and I think putting stone around it will make it look a little thicker and will better comply with overall design. Regarding moving the dormer, there is air conditioning equipment inside that attic under the roof, which makes moving it to the left possible, pretty much, unless the whole thing needs to be redone. And I have actually a letter from a 14-year-old girl that lives behind that dormer. Her bedroom is there, who went through the neighborhood and got signature from all the neighbors, and they like it. So we have their support on it. So let me show you the roof as a part of this. The metal roof that it's been replaced with, and this is similar asphalt shingle. So it's same stone coating, same look, a little more volume to it. During the last fires, this subject property was evacuated. So it's a very high fire hazard. This provides a lot better fire rating. Also, previous fire season, there was a piece of wood that fell on the neighboring property, which has asphalt shingle roof. That property caught on fire immediately. So that was another main reason why the owner went with a better roof rather than having the shingles that are on some of the houses in the area, but they're constantly being taken off by the wind. It is a very high wind area as well, and being replaced with different color shingles. This roof is common in the area, so you have some picture of the houses in the neighborhood that are using the same kind of roof. I've seen them on some ranch-style homes, some barn-style homes in the area. That's pretty much covers it.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the applicant?
You installed that over the existing?
I'm the applicant. I'm not the owner.
Okay.
I made the drawings.
But you don't know them?
You don't know that? I mean, it states in our comments that the roof was installed over the shingles.
No, shingles were removed.
Okay, hold on, please. Why don't you go ahead and come up concurrently? Your name and address, please, sir.
Nicholas Christopher.
Hold on. Do it now because you're at
Nicholas Christopher. I'm the owner of the house.
Okay. There was a question, Ms. Palmer.
You replaced the roof, or what?
Replaced.
Took the old shingles off.
Actually, the roof didn't have the plywood sheeting on it, so plywood sheeting was put per coat and then metal
So our records
over
are
it.
incorrect.
It's replaced.
Thank you.
But it was done without permit. So
Right.
when the building department goes out to inspect the roof installation, they're the ones who are going to be seeing whether the sheeting has been done properly, whether the nailing's been done properly, and all that other stuff. Our focus would be, do we think that the existing roof that's on there now
I
is
was just
aesthetically?
curious.
Yeah. Any other questions we have for the applicants?
Were you the owner while all this was happening?
Partially. Part of the addition was done in 1997. I bought
The one with
house
the
in
permit?
2003.
The one with the permit? So the one after the permit, well, I mean, the one after with no permit is all you?
Yep.
And then remember, the one with the permit was done, but it was never finalized.
Right,
And
but that was
that's why
somebody
it
else.
expired. Okay. Any questions we have for the applicant and/or the owner?
Yes. Briefly talk about what process you went through as far as designing the structural members of that second floor addition, designing.
And forgive me. It's one of the things that I think we should focus upon is the design. As architects, I know we're all incredibly and gravely concerned about the assembly of the construction, especially if it was done without permits. But I think if we just focus on, and of course extension of it, if we just focus on the aesthetics, I think the building department and everyone, the engineering department, can handle those very frightening questions for us as licensed architects and builders. So having said that, please feel comfortable to.
And so were you living in the house while the second floor was being added upon? And was there a general contractor that was hired?
Mr. Simone, let me answer your question if you don't mind. In 2007, the owner wanted to make a lot bigger addition. 2005, I'm sorry. A lot bigger addition. We went through design review board. I was the applicant and designer at the time. We passed the board with no conditions. It was a completely different change, a lot bigger change, a lot bigger addition. We had the house engineered, and due to financial reasons, it never happened. So the changes he did, he had the old drawings of foundation, of the members, and all that stuff. That was used during what he did now.
But never gone through plan
Never
check.
gone through,
And again, all this is all well and good, but you didn't do it properly. So
Definitely.
I think if we just focus on the design and whether we think the design is appropriate, I think we'll be able to navigate through this touchy thing a lot easier. Or Mr. Simon?
No other question.
So the roof that's there is what you showed us right now? The roofing?
Yeah. That's asphalt shingle that used to be, and this is the new one.
Okay.
Any more questions for the applicants or anything? Yes. Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yes, Ms.
Well, I had a question, actually.
Yes.
Is there?
No, you're.
You know, your drawings actually show on the elevation, they show the dormer lining up with the columns. Is that, that's part of the requirement by staff, but it's that.
It's part of the requirement of stuff.
Is that why you show it?
Yeah.
So you can do this?
We
some hard
probably
work.
going to move it a little bit from one side to try to align it in the middle, if it's going to be possible, hopefully.
So you're
Right
moving
side.
Okay.
Mr. You had
No, go.
any more comments? Thank you, sir. Sheila, you had something to
Yes.
add.
Does the board have any more comments for the Code Enforcement Inspector, Thomas Solar? If not, then I believe he's had a very, very long day, so.
You're good? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We're not going to need your assistance. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, the next applicant card I have here is a neighbor, Mr. Frank Vergelito. Let me try one more time. Vergelito.
Vergelito.
Oh, rats.
Lots of pasta sauce. Well, I'm here, board members, just to basically tell you what I know.
Your name and your address for the record,
Frank
sorry.
Vergelito, and I live across the street, 5000 Ocampo Avenue. And I am right across the street. I've been there since 1971. I'm one of the few neighbors that have been there that long. Nick moved into a place called the Barn. The neighbors have always called it the Barn because of the roof line, and I wish Mr. Malikian would have been around back when that house was built. It was built as part of that lower side of the street, that tract of about 8-9 houses, and for some reason that house had this farm-style roof on it. I've known every owner that's lived there, and every owner has complained about the style of the roof, and there's not much they could do about it until Mr. Mandelian came along. Addressing the way it looks in the neighborhood, everybody likes the house. They like what he has done to it. The roof this is the third roof I've seen put on the house since 1971. The other two were the asphalt, and it just did not look good. And I know when he planned to go ahead and put the roof, this new roof on, he actually said, "Hey, look at this great material I've got." And he went first class on the roof, and I think it really is an addition. every house in the neighborhood is quite different. We're not, even though they're cookie-cutter houses, they've taken their own character since way back then. As far as I wanted to talk about the front entry. They always complain the rain came in the front door. There was no overhang, never was. He did a beautiful job there, and it looks nice. And certainly, if he wanted to put veneer on that area, that's fine. Again, that roof is a good-looking roof. The neighbors love it. I like it. I have to look at the place all the time, and neighbors that come back say, "Hey, what happened to the barn? It looks like a house now." All the window dressing he's done on it, looks sharp, and we're quite pleased. In fact, I can see my house in the picture right there across the street, the one with a big flat white roof. In summary, I'd urge you. Certainly, he has to correct what needs to be corrected, but as far as the design in the neighborhood, it looks good. The neighborhood likes it. We all come together. There are a couple people that take umbrage to the fact that he has spent a great deal of money on the house, and they haven't got a lot of money to spend on their homes, and I know he's had a problem with one of the neighbors. So, anyway, that's it. Does anybody have any questions from the neighbor? No?
Thank you for doing my job.
You're welcome.
But that's what retired police officers do. I live next to a retired police officer. He's always very proactive.
Well,
excuse me, sir. Let's find out. Any questions that we have for the neighbor? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions we may have for the applicant or anything? Okay. Yes, sir. Why don't you come back up? You looked like you wanted to add something.
I would like just add one more thing. The affected front facade, where the dormer is about 67 feet away from the property line.
From the
when
front.
Prevailing setback is 27 feet. So it's way back, and the whole house sits about 4 feet below the street level. Just wanted to.
Thank you, sir. Okay, why don't we close the public session? In our packet, we had two letters, one from the gentleman that just spoke and another one. All three of them support us, so you've had an opportunity to read that. Okay, why don't we start on this side? Mr. Simonian, why don't you begin for us, please?
I knew it was a trick question.
Mr. Aliana. Long day for a lot of us, too. Mr. Aliana.
Thank you. No problem. It's the second project today that we're trying to legalize, and it's unfortunate, these things happen. But we do have to deal with them. Your intentions were very good. You're just trying to improve your property. Mr. Ainsworth said you just went about it the wrong way. But setting that aside, I think we can judge things for what they are, and I think staff has done a really good job in trying to analyze this project and giving you some guidelines. And I totally agree with the comments. I think they're really good suggestions. I suspect that removing the dormer will be a bit of a hardship, but given the fact that you have a whole house here that's been added to and done a lot of work without a permit, I don't think it's too much to ask to at least try to move that dormer. It might be difficult for the mechanical. I don't know what that entails exactly, but I think it's important to find a way, because the way it is right now, all the way to the side, there's a lot of odd things about this design, things that you had nothing to do with it, obviously, but where the garage is, where the barn roof is, just a very awkward design. And, putting the dormer there, where it is not right, but putting a dormer there certainly helps. And by putting it the way it's shown on this drawing, the way your designer's done it, aligning with the columns below, it seems like a reasonable way to kind of fine-tune this and make it better. I would really try to work hard and try to make this work. So I don't really want to add anything. I think the comments that the staff has made are right on, and I would totally support them. When I am with that.
Thank you, sir. Now I'll get it right. Mr. Simonian.
Well, every time we have one of these scenarios where there's an illegal addition, something that wasn't permitted that comes in front of us, I always start off by saying something of a similar effect in that we don't like to be in this position. We don't like it. We are a design review board. We like to analyze projects when it's on paper, when it's not built. Because once it's built, you have emotions to deal with, you have financial consequences, and you have people's lives that are directly affected by by this board's decision. And it's not a comfortable spot for us to be in. With that, we put it aside as much as we can, and we focus on the design that's presented to us and try to assess it of how we would judge this package without the pictures, how we would judge this package if it were presented to us initially. And if it was just presented to us as depicted, I would have issues with the second floor as illustrated in the left elevation. So this, and I'm not sure if the camera's going to go all pan down here, but this elevation where we have this massing on the second floor, where we have this solid mass.
Maybe we should move this up.
Thank you. So when we would assess this facade in its entirety, the comments that would have been provided with that break up this facade, break up this wall. There's just too much massing on the second floor. Create shadow lines, create some sort of differentiation between the second floor and the first floor. Those were things that would have been provided back to the applicant almost every time. You know, that's just the way the overall structure of our boards are. We try to minimize mass and bulk. And so when I look at this presentation, that's what pops out to me initially. Secondly, with decks, we have projects that come in front of us that are deck proposals on their own. So someone has an existing house and they go through the trouble of bringing a project to us purely for a deck. Nothing more but a deck. And this board will spend 45 minutes talking about the deck. And we talk about its placement on the side. We talk about the massing that's created as a result of this new deck. We talk about how the neighbors will look up on the hillside and see a deck and how that would affect their view, and so forth. And at times we ask the deck to step down from the backyard. So you have a backyard area, and then the deck steps down where it's closer to the hillside and so forth to reduce that bulk. There are instances where a front elevation is presented to us, and we'll spend a considerable amount of time aligning features, such as aligning windows, second floor to the first floor, where we align columns with dormers above, where we align entrances and windows and so forth. Those are all factors that would have been presented, that would have been thought out, that would have been illustrated to the applicant. And so I must start off by that. I have to say those would have been my thoughts and ideas as I would have looked at this project for the first time. I was at the project this afternoon. I parked in front of the house and I looked at it, and I believe might have been your wife or whatnot, and she came out and she said, "Excuse me, what are you doing out here?" You know, and she got scared. I said, "No, I'm with the city. I'm just looking at the details." And I looked for a long time. From the surface, as it appears to the eye, it's done in a professional manner. It is not one of those additions that we see, those illegal additions where you look at it and you go, "Oh boy, this is just awful." You know, there's just, you don't even trust it. This, as it seems, as it is depicted from 60 feet away, because I didn't go into the property, looked like they had used some decent materials, some thought was placed into the window surrounds, some thought was placed into locating the front door, and so forth. And so there was a level of care in that. And so when we look at the front elevation, the one thing that pops out is just a dormer. That is the biggest issue in the front elevation. Insofar as the veneer and so forth, there's lush landscaping in the front, which pretty much would cover all that stone base anyway. So the dormer is one factor that I think is in the front, and shifting it and aligning it would certainly alleviate it. Replacing it with a skylight, I think, would not benefit the building. I think it looks better as a dormer. And then going to the rear, no one really has a direct view of the rear family area or master bedroom at the lower floor and the space above it, because the building to its west is set farther down in elevation, and the building to its east is actually the view to the building from its neighbor to the west, I should say, is blocked because it's L-shaped. And so there's really no issues there at all, really, as well. So then I circle around and I have comments, really, about that second floor addition on adjacent to bedroom number 3 is where I believe significantly falls short of what we would ask of an applicant, if it were to have come in. And so those are my comments, is the dormer in the front, the addition off of bedroom number 3, I believe, needs to be reworked, and that roof line needs to be reworked in this area, which directly translates in elevation to this area.
I didn't cut that.
And lastly is the deck and its elevation. Now, judging by a picture that was presented to us, I could tell that that's nice quality. The furniture, by the way, is very nice that you've used as well, which is not part of this preview, but nonetheless, it's very nice. There's some mature trees around it. I could see that the tree lines are a good 12 feet above the finished floor of this deck. And I was unable to go to the rear of the property, so I'm not sure how much of this deck is visible to the surrounding neighbors and so forth. But if it is visible, then the height and the finished floor of the deck might need to be revisited. But I say that if it is visible, because I see some very mature trees around it. So those are my 3 thoughts, and the third being a maybe, and I was wondering maybe if staff would have been back there, but we could maybe circle around to that later to answer that. So those are my thoughts.
I went already. You ran already. I lost count. Mr. Yee, do you mind?
Sure.
I wanted to make a little change here. The sheet 0.3 is actually not the first floor plan, but it's actually the second floor plan. And this would be down here. Second floor.
I think we'll just treat this as if we were looking at it without being there again. It's kind of weird. I mean, you did all this research for the roof and everything, and that's not even a big deal to me. It's sort of like it's just lipstick. I almost done it on. It's cosmetic compared to the bigger issue at hand, which is we got a permit, or they had a permit for 300 square feet, but then now we have this huge addition, and so it is what it is. I guess I'm just a little stunned that you kind of started the process and then you said, why do I need to go through that? I got a hammer, I got nails, I'll just go for it, and so it's just astounding to me, but it is what it is. I think that the dormer definitely needs to get smaller, moved over, centered on the window below it. The elevation on the, I guess it's the left elevation, it needs to be reworked. There needs to be some windows or some kind of breaking up of that two-story mass as it goes back. Maybe even consider putting a window on the right elevation where the bedroom is on the upstairs. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Ms. Palmer, do you want to help us?
Okay. I agree with Mr. Yu's comments he just made. The dormer definitely should be moved over or made smaller. I agree with staff's comments about putting maybe a wainscot underneath the windows in the front, but I don't think that the stone that's existing is the right stone for this house. It doesn't seem to go with the architecture. So if stone was, or something was put there, I would suggest to be brick or something that's more complementary. I don't agree with the size of the columns and some of the things in the rear yard, but they're not seen. I did drive around to the lower street, and you cannot see the deck, but I don't know if the houses behind can see that deck. And I'm sure if that's enclosed, it could be very massive looking. It's 12 foot high. So that could be a concern, but and also where you have the windows outside the garage, you've just put frames rather than shutters. They're just frames against the siding, which I think that could definitely be improved on. So I agree that the windows should be changed in that front area as well. And I think that's all I'll comment on for now.
Okay. I'm not going to add any more with respect to comments with respect to the aesthetics. You've heard all of us add to it. I'm going to go one place that is extremely disappointing. Building and safety will make sure that the construction is safe and secure for your family. But you've added a second story onto an existing house, and you have people living there. That's pretty... That's pretty much, I'm trying to find the right word, pretty irresponsible. Pretty irresponsible, especially in a seismic zone. Very irresponsible. And even though aesthetically your neighbor likes it, and it's aesthetically an improvement on the barn as to what it was before, to serve and protect, architects, to protect. The department is called Building and Safety. You may get approved here, and that's a shame that we, as you're saying, Mr. Simonian, that we're having to look at things, and it's always uncomfortable for us to look at things that are built, especially when they're habitable. This is habitable. You're at risk. Even though it may be perfect, you may not, you're putting your family at risk. So that's, for me, one of the most disappointing things for us to review right now. The design, design and taste changes. Okay. Brad, have you been able to make some comments and summarize some of the bullet points of the things that we've commented on?
Yeah, let me read back to you what I have, and you can let me know what you want me to keep or revise.
Thank you, sir.
The first one I have, and I think I'll need some additional clarification on how to go forward with this, depending on what the board decides. But the first conditional comment I have is to rework the bedroom adjacent to bedroom number 3. Did the board have any particular thoughts on what they wanted to do? Now, there was a comment later about adding a window to the left elevation.
I think that's what you were saying, right? This area right here.
What was the reworking of the bedroom? What was that?
I think, and we could, it might take a few of us going back and forth to illustrate our thoughts efficiently and to be as precise as possible. The left elevation needs to be reconsidered in order to reduce mass and bulk.
Specifically, in what areas would you suggest?
I would focus in on the portion of the drawings that are depicted on sheet 0.3, where it says new addition adjacent to bedroom number 3. The roof above this new addition area that's hatched needs to be broken up, and the elevation as depicted as left elevation on sheet 0.6 should be reconsidered to reduce mass and bulk.
Are we talking about the roof over the second floor addition or over the first floor addition?
Second floor addition. This portion over here.
Yeah, this one addition. Look at the back and the one above it.
Yeah, here.
Mr. Simone, if you go up one.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about the side, or you're talking about?
Well, from this side, they've done
What does that mean?
the drawing, since it's two-dimensional, breaks it up the massing from the rear elevation because this is on the lower level and this is on the higher level. However, there needs to be some relief on this corner over here.
I think it would be on the other side of the house because the addition on the second floor, if you look at that top elevation, is on the
entire house.
the left side.
They're trying to get that approved as a new.
In any case, is it massing changes that you're looking for, or window changes, or both?
Well, the plan certainly could benefit from more windows.
Right.
And when you add windows, you're breaking up the massing.
Okay, so if fenestration is sufficient, we'll add that as a condition, because as you know, the structure is built, and if it's not conditioned if the roof is not conditioned to be modified, if the wall is not conditioned to be modified, it will likely be as you see it. If you condition additional windows, we can work with that.
I think in order to give the applicant as much flexibility as possible under this scenario, you're going to have to get a structural engineer to do an analysis. Once you get a structural engineer that performs an analysis, you're going to take some of these comments and concerns that were taken, and then you're going to try to come up with a solution. You're going to come back to staff with a solution and try to address the comment, which is break up the left elevation as depicted on sheet 0.6. Now, I'm trying to be as non-committal as possible about windows and roofing to try to give them that flexibility, because I understand some of it might be shear wall, some of it might be have a ton of wiring going through it, some of it might have ducts going through it. I don't know. But that's really up to you guys to see what's the least evasive way you could come up with breaking up that massing. And I think your architect understands what we're saying. It's coming up with that solution. And so I would like to stay away from specifics in order to give them that opportunity to come back to us. And some are shaking their heads, and that would be my take on it.
If just as you consider, if the decision and the motion is ultimately to a return for redesign, be as flexible as you want. If it's an approval with conditions, we would like it to be as specific as
And
possible.
if I may suggest, and I could completely and couldn't support you more about these grave concerns concerning how it was constructed with respect to not just load bearing, but also seismic issues. With all due respect, would you mind?
No,
I
go
think that
ahead.
when we look on sheet .2 and sheet .3 to help break up that large volume of wall that we're seeing on the elevation, that windows must be introduced both on the second floor and on the first floor, and we suggest that the windows be a size of about 5 by 3, and still be able to successfully be engineered and constructed properly. Okay.
I think we can do that. I agree
Okay.
with that.
Can I clarify one thing?
No, sir, we're good. Okay, forgive me.
But that goes also for the right elevation, because there's an addition on the right elevation too. There's no fenestration there. There's no fenestration on the,
Around the chimney.
well, where it says new stucco to match existing.
Mm-hmm.
There's no windows there. I mean, why would not putting windows there? I mean, I'm glad that you looked, because my focus was really on the front and the rear, but you brought up the size, which is actually really important. This is definitely a side that probably could use some windows as well. And the left is the worst. I mean, the left is really, it's pretty massive.
Okay.
So I think fenestration can do a lot, and especially, and we should require that. Just somehow figure out a way to put windows there. They're fairly, like you said, give a specific, a minimum size of 5 by 3, and if they're going to be bigger, they're going to be bigger. But a minimum 5 by 3, or give them a square footage. And then they can do it anywhere that it fits, because they do have to consider shear walls. Does that sound reasonable?
And still be able to get engineered properly.
Absolutely. Yeah, they should be able to engineer, right?
Would you like me to read through the rest of the conditions that I have?
Yes. And I think there'll be discussions on every one of them that come up.
Yep.
In order to clarify as much as possible.
That's fine. We talked about the dormer being smaller or shifted more to the center, and that shifting should be over the windows from down below.
Should be centered, yes.
Yes.
Just to reiterate, the left elevation...
And just to clarify, that should be smaller and centered, not smaller or centered.
Smaller and centered. The left elevation...
So let me ask you a question. When you make it smaller and centered, those columns are going to have to get narrow. They're going to get closer. See on the elevations? The columns are already aligned with the edges of the window below. So if you make this dormer smaller, that means now those columns have to be moved inward a bit, which would cut the windows. They'd be in front of the windows below. So something to think about.
Well, they could work it out.
I mean, I don't mind if they just move it over and keep it. I mean, the way it's shown on the elevation to me is reasonable. Everything lines up, and I mean, I'm okay with that.
Okay, so Brad, key component would be realigned dormer as indicated on sheet point 5, and proportionally maintained as drawn.
As drawn, because as it's drawn, I believe it's as exists. It's not smaller.
Right.
So
that's pretty enormous, though. I mean,
it is bigger, but then what you have, then it's just a dormer. But then it's just a dormer.
It's
then
not
the columns
okay?
should stay where they are, and then just have a little dormer up there.
right, but it's not a little dormer. It's a.
No, not that one, not that one. If you're gonna reduce the size of it, it's not gonna look like that anymore.
Right.
You can't. My point is that you can't make. If you're trying to make the dormer smaller, they shouldn't have to bring those columns in even further, because then it will be odd.
You could leave the columns where they are.
Right.
You know.
Right, and then make the dormer smaller.
And just reduce the size of the door.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
reduce the size of the dormer and have it centered over that window below.
And the columns to remain where they
Okay.
are.
Is there an idea about a dimension? 6 inches, 12 inches on either side?
Have to work it out with the way it looks good with the columns.
Okay.
Proportionally, I mean,
A couple of feet at
that's out of
least.
proportion. So whatever proportion you work.
I would say at least the edges of the dormer should be lining up with the inside faces of the columns.
That's a good proportion.
okay.
So Brad, there's your thing.
So the edges of the dormers be centered over the window.
No, the outside edges of the dormer should align with the inside edges of the column as shown on this elevation.
Yeah, then you get more of sort of one of these things, right? Rather than just...
Okay, next.
Okay, to replace the stone veneer at the front with brick or a different
I
material.
just think it should be a different material. Brick is a suggestion, because it matches the roofing.
Now, is the wainscot a condition?
Yeah, I would think so, yes.
Okay. And as a corollary to that, staff had made a recommendation to remove that stone veneer, so we haven't heard one way or the other.
Remove which stone?
The stone veneer that's around the entrance on those columns.
If you put brick or something similar at the wainscot, it should match, the column should match.
Should also be brick. Okay, so if you're conditioning brick on the wainscot, then we're also conditioning brick in those other places, or that that existing stone veneer, or let's say proposed stone veneer, is removed, and it could be plaster or brick.
Correct.
Great.
Okay.
Can we make another comment on that dormer? We were saying to give a proportion. I'm just catching it here with Mrs. Simonian. If you line up the edges of the dormer with the columns, the inside of the columns, it's still fairly big. I sketched it in both this drawing and this drawing, and it seems like maybe the edges of the dormer should align with the window.
Geo.
The window mullions.
Geo.
Is this what, I mean, you don't think it'd be too small or too big, or?
Well, I'm looking at this picture. See, if you look at the window mullion, the window below, you could treat that as the proportion of the dormer, rather than going as wide as the. But did you draw with the dormer lining up with the inside face? How does it look?
It looks good.
I think it's fine, right?
Fine.
Okay, so that's we stay there.
The dormer could always be a little taller as well.
We could all be a little taller.
Not you.
Go ahead, Brad. Next one. We're getting punchy.
It's okay. Sixth item I have is that the windows should be changed at the front,
Okay.
but I'm not sure in which manner the board wanted to go.
Well, I think we traditionally have wanted
Like a fiberglass?
fiberglass.
As viewed from the street, so all the windows that are visible from the street, as you typically say?
What's there right now? I'm sorry.
Vinyl.
Vinyl. Okay.
Well, the appearance, especially with the window surrounds that were present at the site, did not give it that cheap look that vinyl typically has. And so, because again of the window surrounds and the materials used and so forth, the vinyl was not as big of a concern to me looking at it. So we're already, creating quite a bit of surgery here, and so we should have that discussion whether we want to replace all the windows facing the front or just maybe give them some direction, maybe of the new ones being of some quality or the new ones to match these. I'm not quite sure, but I didn't get the feeling that it had that cheap vinyl look, so insofar as the material that was used.
I normally would agree with changing windows to upgrade them, but I think talking about a dormer that has to be relocated, I think if that dormer matches the window that's below, and I'm okay with that.
All right, so let's exclude that one for now in the first pass with respect to see if we have.
And one other thing, I'm sorry, that I've got is to add the shutters back onto the front facade of the garage. Is that correct?
I don't know that we have to add the shutters back, but I would certainly remove what's existing because it's just a framework. It may look fine without the shutters. It's the only area that has shutters.
Although we just heard that the vinyl windows are okay because of the window surrounds shown.
There's window surrounds, and
Double
then there's
surround.
This is a
Double
this
surround.
extends beyond.
If you look at
You look at
the permit. Sorry.
I would say, see where the shutters, it appears to be a shutter on the drawing?
I don't have the benefit
it's a double
of...
surround. It's like
Oh, okay.
all
Gotcha.
shutters that's created.
Okay.
But just keep it simple and keep it. Just modify that window.
Get rid of the fake shutter.
Okay, and so the wood surround, just around the window, is fine. Remove that double surround. Okay. Gotcha.
Thank you.
Anything else, Brad?
I've got on the right elevation at the first floor for the addition that was done in the back to add fenestration to it.
Okay.
And then we have the 6, although some of them are repetitive in what we've already talked about, recommendations from staff. How did the board want to...
And I would say those should be as included as part of what we've discussed, but we need to exclude for this motion item number 3 that Mr. Simonian is suggesting with the surrounds, we don't need to change the windows. So the motion that we have right now, 6 comments become 5 comments, in which we omitted number 3 to be consistent with the motion that we're going to have.
Got it.
And we did hear some concern about the overall size and placement of the deck. Is that not something that's a consideration, and that item 6 as listed on the staff report enclose the detached desk at the rear as required by code with wood or hardy plank, etc. Is that sufficient? We also recommended that the enclosure for that deck be set back so that there's a shadow line under the deck. That might require reworking of the structure that's existing, but as you've shown, we're reviewing this as if it's being proposed, so that may not be a consideration. There was some mention of lowering the deck or stepping the deck, so I just wanted to double check that that's not something that we're considering or including at this time.
I would suggest that we use it, that they have to recess the deck, and if enclosing the deck creates a large mass that is seen from the neighbors, that would have to be screened with landscaping.
Okay, so to recess the enclosure below the deck, and we could simply condition additional landscape screening in front of that.
Okay.
That's fine.
Another thought is if building and safety goes through and determines that the structure is safe for the deck, assuming it is safe and assuming that the trees are very mature around it, without having us to dictate recessing it, perhaps we could put some sort of a lattice work front of it and then grow some vegetation, landscaping that might grow up on it and cover it. Wanted to see what those thoughts were. Bless you.
Thank you.
By code, that deck needs to be enclosed.
Needs to be
The
enclosed.
underside, right. So
It's a pretty
so
massive
there's no storage
deck.
underneath the paint
It's a huge
material.
deck.
I think if there's enough, I think if we just say what we're saying, provide a recess plus the enclosing of the suggestions, they'll have plenty of opportunities to.
Okay, so let's say a 12-inch recess and additional landscape screening.
You'll have a couple little problems, as
They can
Mr.
work
Youth,
that out.
they'll work it out.
But that's
They'll work it out. Okay. With respect to the deck, you may also find that the railing is non-compliant to current code, and that railing is going to have substantial changes to it because the 4-inch diameter sphere will go through that railing. So be careful. It's gonna come up.
It's going to change, yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Bradley?
That's what I have.
If the railing should change, is there any direction that we have from the board on the railing?
Well, the railing will change, and what they can do,
Add something.
yeah, they could add a vertical and a horizontal sticking in between.
Okay, so they should provide additional wood members as required by code.
As will be required by code and inspection.
They could put a screen too. They could put a mesh.
Mesh, whatever. Okay,
It is
Brad,
nice, sort of the Roman.
why don't you see if we got a motion for what we've written down.
Do we have a motion? The conditions as...
And let me remind you, the motion that we have excludes item number 3 on the city's recommendation, which is for the windows to be changed at visible. Doesn't include that at this point.
Let me, before we do anything, item number 3, the windows. Are we all on the same page that whether they should be completely removed and replaced with fiberglass, or? I mean, I think I heard Mr. Simonian, but normally, you know, on a good quality project, we would ask for the windows to be of good quality. And this house has a lot of problems already aesthetically, and
I think
better windows will definitely make a better project.
Right, but I think, and my take would be, if this project were to come to us, they would have been showing the back or the addition portion of it, and we would have, I don't know if we would have made them change everything out in the front, though, if they're not doing any work.
They're just doing the dormer, so we would say just match the dormer with the window below,
I mean,
right?
we would consider that,
Yeah.
not necessarily as an automatic that we would change it out. Because, I was looking at this old picture versus new, and it looks like it's the same vinyl window there on the garage portion.
I think we've done the research, and those windows were legally permitted. That's not part of the, is that correct?
There's no record as to
on
when it
October
was.
22nd, on October 22nd, 1999, forgive me, let me not say that.
Okay, Brad, I think Brad's done a lot of investigation on this. Are the windows legal as we...
There's been no permits found for those windows, so we're not sure when it was or what was done there before.
So I guess the windows are up to you.
Really up to, I think, the
does
group.
that change
I
things?
made my thoughts clear on it, but I would certainly agree with what's presented on the table.
Am I reading this incorrectly? A building permit, someone, was issued for a 354 square foot addition at rear, new trellis built adjacent to the addition, and a window change-out, open parenthesis, vinyl windows with grids installed all around the house and garage. The permit expired because they didn't get their final, and so that's part of this legalization. So vinyl...
I see. So they got it, but they never finished
Part of the legalization.
Vinyl windows with grids is what we have here.
As part of the
Basically, they were
legalization.
approved, but we just didn't finish it.
It was never final.
But they installed it as...
I'm okay with the final windows as they are.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Well, our motion right now doesn't have it in there. No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, I will move to approve with conditions stated. Let's see where that goes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
This will be roll call. Mr. Aliano?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Simonian?
Yes.
Mr. Yu?
Yes.
Chairman Insua?
Yes.
Approval carries with the conditions as spelled out on a 5-0 vote. Thank you.
Okay. These are tough projects that we have to, both staff and, sir, the project we voted to, what was the vote, to return for redesign? Oh, no, to approve with conditions, right? Again, it's been a long day for all. Please come up, and you had a comment. Your name and address again, please, sir.
Thank you. Nicholas,
Is the microphone?
3918 Bird Way. Could you please look at the page number 3, bedroom number 2, and where it shows the dormer? It's my daughter's bedroom, and the dormer right now is continuation of her bedroom. And right next to it, you can see attic. It's a air conditioning unit and furnace there, all the way to the side of the dormer. So I'm just trying to figure out how can we move. It will, if we shift it, it will go out of the bedroom towards the attic where the air conditioning is.
But remember, you're not only shifting it, but you're reducing its size. And I think that that you may find that the right or the wall that's north to the page is actually going to come down, so you're not going to be encroaching into that attic space by its reduction. So that's
So I'm reducing one side?
You're reducing both sides to get a center line of the windows below. So in other words, you're shifting and reducing, and I think there will be no encroachment on, in fact, I think you're going to be increasing your existing attic space right now.
Right.
We'll try.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, again, the public portion of the commission is closed. Do we have any announcements other than the...
2 sets of minutes for your review and approval.
Okay, the first one is on June 10th.
Correct.
All of us, no.
Everyone was present except for Mr. Simonian.
Do we have any comments or
I don't have
corrections?
The one that got corrected, that I abstained, right?
And then last month's is here.
I'm sorry, would
Those
you
are the
mind?
meeting notes where I abstained from voting. I think it was corrected.
Let me double check now. This would be for
For the Trader Joe's?
Honolulu
I don't have the notes.
petitions. Palmer, you and Insua voted yes. Board Member Simonian was absent, and Mr. Aliana was, yes, you abstained, so
it's
those
on
were
record.
corrected.
Very good.
I move me to approve those minutes.
I have a motion by Board Member Palmer. Is there a second?
A second.
And a second by Board Member Yu. Board Member Palmer?
Yes.
Board Member Yu?
Yes.
Board Member Simonian? You were absent. And Board Member Aliano?
Yes.
And Chairman Insua?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 4-0. Now we go on to the minutes of July the 8th, and everyone was present except for Chairman Insua.
That's correct.
It's the street.
This one...
Is that the last one we had?
This is the last one that we had. This was the one with the Habitat for Humanities project. And the project that had the El Miradero
Okay,
on the
on that
triangular.
particular one, there was one comment that said if the hedge was removed for whatever reason, that they would have to reinstall a hedge to cover the facade. And I thought we said that was their option because there's really nothing wrong with the facade.
No, I think that there was an agreement that if the hedge is for any reason removed, it would be replaced. That's what we heard.
See, I thought we said that they could do whatever they want because it really was, they would put new landscaping in, there was nothing wrong with that facade. But if that's what we agreed, fine, I just don't...
We can go ahead and look at the tape and
I
see.
think we waited back and forth, and then...
Yeah, there was back and forth. So we'll have the planner just double-check that to make sure that we got it correctly. Likely, your recollection is correct. That would be my prediction.
So we'll hold this
I just
off
thought it
unless
was
we-
a nice design, and we really didn't have to...
Yeah, honestly, that condition is not going to impact the decision the applicant is moving forward, so, but we will make sure we'll get it right for the record.
Let's hope so.
Okay.
I move...
So, is there a motion to adjourn at